I didn't even realize it till I was in my 20s, like my early 20s. I learned that I was anorexic, which is a disease that comes from this need to have control over something in your life. And it was a very odd thing because I was actually studying to be a therapist for troubled teenage girls. I was working at a rehab facility where a lot of our girls were anorexic. And even with all of that data in front of me, it took me so long to realize that like, oh my gosh, I'm completely being controlled by this thing that I think I got into because I was trying to control my life, and it now is controlling me.
I'm thrilled to have the incredibly talented Lindsey Stirling joining us today. An extraordinary violinist, dancer, and composer, Lindsey has captivated audiences across the world with her unique fusion of classical music and electronic dance beats. Her journey from America's Got Talent loser to YouTube sensation to chart-topping artist is nothing short of epic. And throughout this interview, she shares some of her most powerful stories of overcoming the loss of loved ones, battling anorexia, and dealing with the failures of launching a new artistic genre. Hugely excited to welcome Lindsey Stirling to the Checkup Podcast. Welcome to New York.
Thank you. I'm fresh off the boat. I just got in this morning.
You know, it's funny, fresh off the boat for me, being a Russian immigrant means something different than it probably means to you.
It probably
What
does.
does fresh off the boat mean to you?
Well, I should have said fresh off the bus. We just rolled in this morning and
Tour bus and all.
a tour bus, yeah.
And what was last night? What was going on that you were coming in?
Last night we had a show in Asheville. It was great. Such a cute town. But yeah, I actually loved the tour life. Like just mostly doing a show almost every night. We do like 5 nights a week and hit a different city like most days of the week.
And the current tour is called Duality?
It is.
And
yeah.
what does that mean?
So Duality, it's the name of my album. But it comes from a lot of different things. But I kind of came up with this concept because I've just been thinking so much about myself and how, I don't know, I think we're all very conflicted people. I think that we have moments when we feel really brave and really strong and we fully believe in ourselves and you're like, I can do anything. And then almost the next second you fully doubt and you're like, why, you get imposter syndrome and you're like, why would I ever think I could do anything? And, we just have so much conflict in us constantly. And even the music I was writing, I kept trying to like find one sound. I was trying to write a rock album and then I was like, that's not feeling right. So I'm going to try to write a pop album. And everything just, felt too constrained. So finally I just wrote, and I almost felt like I wrote 2 different albums. And so I was like, oh, these are just the different like dualities of myself in music form. And so anyways, it was really a fun album to write, and it's a super fun tour to do because it's kind of like this parallel universe that we get to kind of go back and forth between of different sounds, different sides.
And you're performing in 2 avenues by doing the art form of dance and the art form of violin.
Yes.
So that also feeds into the duality of it all.
Very true. 2 things that normally don't go together.
You mentioned this idea of imposter syndrome. Have you ever had a moment that you can describe where you had the imposter syndrome and then you proved yourself to be worthy of the title?
All the time,
Take me through the most recent time.
The most recent time was a professional violinist came to my meet and greet, and she was like, I'm a professional violinist. I'm so excited to see you perform tonight. And immediately I thought, oh, she's going to know. Like, she's going to know that I'm not really like a great violinist. And that was like my first thought. And even as I was playing that, I was like, you got to be super in tune tonight. There's a professional violinist in the crowd. Then I was like, like snap out of it. Like, I've never pretended to be the best violinist in the world. Like, I do my thing. I do my thing in my own way. And, trying to snap yourself out of it and then being able to do like a fine show, a show that I could be proud of, even though I'm like, she's going to know.
What strategies do you use in those moments where you are finding yourself having some doubt?
I think you just literally have to turn inward. Like no outside facts can, ever fix that. Really, like the amount of applause from a crowd will never change the way that you feel about yourself if you doubt yourself. And I felt that massively when a few years ago, my anxiety just kind of out of nowhere, I was like, wow, when did I become a super anxious person? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure this is anxiety. And I remember during that time, I would walk onto stage every night in so much fear of just like, I'm going to let this audience down. I can't let them down, or I'm going to disappoint them. They're going to be so sad they bought a ticket tonight. And because of that, no matter how I performed, no matter how much they cheered for me, I would walk off stage sure that I had disappointed them and that I wasn't enough. And, like no outside source could fix it. And one day my therapist actually said to me, because I was telling her this, and she goes, "Isn't this your dream?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "What did your dancers think about the show last night?" Because we had just played Red Rocks, which is like an iconic venue. Right. Everybody dreams to play Red Rocks. And I was like, "They loved it." And she's like, "How did your band feel about the show?" And I was like, they were stoked. She's like, "And you went to your dressing room and cried after the show and closed your door." And she's like, "You're missing it. You're living your dream and everybody else is living it, but you're missing it." And it was just this moment of like, I've got to figure this out because no outside source can. Right. And figuring out how to calm my anxiety, how to get it under control before I walked onto that stage, how to get a better perspective, because this perspective I walk onto that stage with, or the perspective you walk into a party with, or like, that's what you're going to usually leave with.
Yeah. In starting your career exploding in 2010, did you notice social media playing a role in fueling that anxiety? Because normally when you're talking to yourself, that's hard, right? Because you have your own worst critic there. But then when that starts multiplying on such a large scale, where everyone's voices are now heard by you, and heard by you at all times of the day. Not just when you're on stage,
right?
But they're coming home with you. They're in bed with you.
For sure.
Did that take a toll on you?
It did. And to be honest, it still does. Like I still have to check myself. I don't think it's the kind of thing that, at least my personality, I can't just check that off and be like, no. Remember, we don't care what people think. Remember, haters on the internet are trolls. Like, I really have to like talk myself off the ledge, pretty consistently, where you start to like, because once you like see like a video nowadays, it's like TikTok videos of people talking about you and assessing you. It's not just a comment anymore. And so, if you go down that rabbit hole, then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this video has 5,000 likes. Oh my gosh, there's 2,000 comments, and then you go through and people are agreeing. And so you're like, it's not just a comment. It's like there's a rabbit hole of information, and that leads you to another video of someone assessing you again. And so it is this thought of like, really there's every reason to feel almost every emotion all the time. You can feel lack, you can feel abundance, you can feel gratitude, you can feel, pain, you can feel love, you can feel jealousy. And there's a reason for all of it, I've just realized. And you get to choose where you're going to draw your source. You get to choose where you're going to draw your strength. And are you going to focus on that negative, or are you going to say, I know there's plenty of positive examples of my imprint on the internet as well. And so really like taking a moment to like take a deep breath, pull yourself off the ledge, shut down that video and choose another option. Choose something else. The
disconnection is so valuable. I found that even for myself, when I see negative comments or negative videos about content that I've made, it's easy to continue down that rabbit hole
100%.
Of catastrophizing and thinking that everyone believes this. And now this is going to change everyone's perspective of who you are. And then when you step out into real life, as opposed to life on social media, you're like, wow, that's not what most people think.
Right.
And it's hard because if you're enveloped in that world, because it's easy to be enveloped by social media, you could be anywhere and social media will be there, versus the real world, you have to go out somewhere.
Yeah.
And you have to make the choice to go there. That's why I feel like one of the greatest things that I tell my patients when they feel that way is to not necessarily shun social media, but try and just shift the balance of being more in the real world.
Absolutely.
Even if you're in a real world where people don't like you, it's going to feel better than social media.
Anything's better than that.
Right? Because it's such a fueled fire of what is going on social media. What would be your advice, given all the stuff that you've been through in your career, for someone who is up and coming as a performer, musician, or even a content creator? What would you tell them to focus on when they are perhaps having those moments of doubt?
Oh, well, if it's moments of doubt of like, you mean like haters kind of thing?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say just like there's always way more positivity than there is negativity. Almost always, and I think that the negative voices, they're for some reason so much louder. And I think that with anything in life, not just social media, but you'll have hundreds of comments and then one bad one will like stick out. But in all of life, it's a lot easier to notice the anger or the hate in this world. But I really do also believe that the love, the joy, the gratitude, like all of that stuff, it's more powerful. And if you choose to focus on it and you choose to find it, it has more ability to actually change you and make you feel good and like lift you up, but you have to like kind of focus on it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
From a science perspective, you're very right. Not
Doesn't
just from an
always feel that way,
experience.
but it's true.
Because there is this negativity bias that we all have. In fact, that's how we survived. Because if you're more conscious of threats and less just dancing in the field where there's a bear running around, you're more likely to survive. But now in the world where technically some negativity is always around us, it's hard to escape that bias.
Yeah.
It has to be a conscious choice and not just, oh, when is this going to stop? Technically, it will never stop. So you have to figure out how to make the choice of not paying attention to some of these negativity situations.
100%. Yeah.
For you, as someone who picked this very unique avenue of performing social media, how did you decide that this is the way you want to go? Was it circumstances aligned and you found your love for the fiddle, or it somehow was guided to you by a friend, a loved one?
You know, the whole experience, I mean, I've played the violin my whole life, always loved it. I kind of started to find this niche style of mine, honestly, because I just got really bored and burnt out, I guess is a better word. I'd played classical all growing up. I was about to study to be a classical performance major and just realized like, I don't even like this anymore. This is, and I've realized now in hindsight, I'm a very creative person. I'm creatively driven. And as a classical musician, I never even got to choose what I played. You're handed a sheet of music with dots on it and you express it as you're told.
Right.
And so when I realized I was burnt out, I started to just experiment. And for the first time being like, what would I want to play? Like, I guess I could play anything. Like, and what
was that weird?
It was
feeling like you actually have to make the choice of what you want to do.
It was like, I don't know what I like to play. And so I just started like jamming with other bands. I would go to like little open mic nights, and if I thought someone was cool, I'd made a little business card and I'd be like, hi, if you ever need a violinist to record on your, if you're making a track or an album or something, like, here's my number. And so I made all these little business cards, and I would just start playing with random people, from country musicians to EDM artists to you name it, singer-songwriters. And it started to awaken me this really fun world where I got to write and I got to express, and I figured out my style. And it was just so, the style was so big because I loved EDM. And at the time I was really into dubstep. So like big, massive drops. And I was like, well, I can't just like stand there with this kind of music. I gotta learn how to move. Like I gotta express
So you weren't originally dancing?
Well, no, I was never a dancer growing up. And so, in my lessons, my classical teachers, when I'd have my recitals, they'd be like, move a little bit. Like, you can emote, Lindsey. But I was always so rigid. And so it was a very conscious, like, I am going to learn to like move.
So how does one learn to dance? Because I need some advice.
Okay, let's walk through this. Honestly, I just started by being like, what could I possibly do while playing?
Okay.
And it started with just like, oh, I can walk on the beat. Oh, I could flick my leg. Oh, I could like use my hips. Okay. So it's just really like so rudimentary, so simple in the beginning. And, through the last 12 years of this journey, I've gotten to work with amazing choreographers and learned a lot. Dancing with the Stars that's how you learn to dance. You need to be on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah. How do I do that? Bribe?
Yes. I was like, how did I get on that show? You just need to reach out to them. You need to start pinging their dancers and be like, I need to learn to dance. And they would love you. I think you'd be a hit.
I think I'd be terrible as a dancer, but I'd be so enthusiastically bad that it would create maybe some good ratings.
Honestly, there's different people. Sorry, I'm on a tangent now.
No, this is a good tangent.
There's different people that
You see what happens when you don't have a script?
I love it. I was so impressed that you were like, no, we're just going with this. I was like, I started to sweat for you. Like, how do you do that? I like plan every moment of my show. So anyways, impressive. Dancing with the Stars. There's like different types of people that do well on the show. There's always one that makes it to the end that's like a great dancer.
Right.
Then there's always one or two that make it all the way to the end. They're
as
just
progressive
that
learner.
Progress, that like learn, that grow, and everyone's rooting for you because everybody loves
But then you always
underdog.
lose.
You always lose. Actually, no. Bobby Bones won, and he was. Don't hate me, Bobby Bones fans. You know it. He was awful, but he was so likable, and he improved, and like you couldn't help but love him. So don't come at me, Bobby Bones fans. He was great.
Okay,
so you could be the Bobby
that could be
Bones.
the future, because it's hard to find that rhythm for me.
Oh, they'll teach you. They'll great. Okay, so
how do you learn? How does one learn rhythm?
Ooh, I was just gonna say that's a tougher thing.
Yeah.
Okay, this blows my mind. So you can't hear the rhythm of a song? If you're listening to a song, you don't know when to bob your
I hear
head?
you snapping. Yeah, I can bob my head.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's rhythm.
But then you have to coordinate the limbs.
The limbs have
the
to
limb coordination,
hit the rhythm.
which is weird because I'm an athlete, so you would think there's coordination in being an athlete.
I think it's in you.
I have to search deep inside.
I think you just need a great ballroom coach to pull it out of you.
You know, it's funny. Russian guys are like notorious for taking classes in ballroom dancing and being.
Yeah, they're
but
great.
even they're not great freestyle. Like I'll see some of these ballroom dancers and I'm like, wow, you're so good. And then you'll see them in a nightclub. You want to look great in the club. That's where you want to look good. Okay. In the discotheque.
In the discotheque. Okay. We can work on that.
Okay, so you learned to become a really good dancer.
Yes, I have learned.
And in doing that, who has been an influence for you in shaping what future Lindsey looks like? Or is it you're the trailblazer in this?
You know, it's not ever violinists there were definitely violinists that did unique things and made me very inspired because I was like, oh my gosh, they're doing it their own way. But as far as like movement and dance, honestly, some of the people that have really inspired me the most is honestly Pink. Just going to a Pink show. Cause I also I would say Cirque du Soleil was like one of the first. I was like, they do crazy stuff that you've never seen before. They combine things that shouldn't be combined. They're just these incredible, like, how on earth do you do that kind of people? And I just remember really being inspired by that. So that was probably first. But then I went to a Pink show and Pink is like flying around in the air. And she wasn't raised to be a circus performer. She's someone who has learned that because of the way she wanted to perform. And it made me be like, well, I could probably do something like that. So anyways, I got super inspired by her. I now do aerial acrobatics and stuff in my show, which is super fun.
How much harder does it make to play the violin when you're in the air?
It's harder,
right?
For sure. But it also is like a really fun challenge. Not to say like I've mastered dance and violin, but it's also like I've become quite comfortable in learning choreography and spinning and doing back bends while playing. And so being able to like now go up in the air and do like hoop routines and stuff, and then they'll hand me my violin and it's so fun to see the reaction every night in like the crowd. I'm like, oh, I know they're going to get stoked right now. I don't know. It's really fun.
No, that is really fun. In learning this craft, have you ever had setbacks mentally, physically, medically, maybe even?
Oh, for sure. I feel like I've learned this process of when I have that feeling of, oh, this is impossible. I'm like, actually, we just started. It always feels impossible when you start. I remember when I first started to try to like walk and play at the same time. It felt impossible. It was like, it was like this. I was like, I can't use these two parts of my brain. And so I always think back to that and I'm like, well, what I can do now in movement, so whenever I was like on the hoop and like upside down and I'm like, gravity's pulling against the bow. This is just impossible. And I'm like, no. We just started. I'm just at the beginning of this process. Like walking felt impossible once upon a time, I'm sure, so that's kind of become just... You
do a lot of evidence-based strategies, just so you know. Is this from therapy? Did you pick this up from...
I've been through to a lot of therapy.
No, because it's so accurate to look at past episodes of success as a way to give you reassurance to move forward.
Yes. Well, actually, it's funny. I studied to be a therapist in college.
Really?
Yeah. So I was going to be a recreational therapist, but I still had to do all the therapy classes.
Right.
And then
what drew you to that?
I wanted to work with at-risk youth. I loved, I was going to college in Utah and they have a lot of treatment centers where they do rehabilitation for at-risk youth, either for drugs or for anorexia or any sort of mental disorders. And I worked at one of them and I loved it. And I loved working with teenagers, which is, I guess, a rare thing.
Rare. It's hard to work with teenagers.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Something about the teenage brain I really understand, though. Maybe I'm stuck there. But I just feel like I always had a way to, I could reach these teenagers almost more than I can reach, kids even or adults. I understand their minds. And so I loved that. And anyways, was studying to do that when my little mind decided to be a violinist again.
How do you make that pivot? Do you wake up one morning and say, oh, now violin, no more therapy?
No, I finished my degree. It was in the middle of that process of when I was making the violin fun. I decided not to study it in school, made it fun again. And then I started to write music. And then suddenly all my free time, I was being a violinist when that's what I had chosen not to study. So I finished school. I got my degree. I guess I could be a therapist, but I'm not licensed. So, but yeah, no, I just started doing it more and more. And it was almost like I was standing on these two lines that were going farther and farther apart and straddling them. And I graduated just in time and then jumped full time to all right.
You had to make the choice.
Yeah, I had to make the choice and I chose violining.
I noticed earlier you said a professional violinist came up to you And you
Yes.
said it as if you're not one.
I know. That's
Why?
the funny thing about imposter syndrome is like the thought that in my mind, classical is the, it's the nuance, it's the ballet of the violin world. And so when someone comes up and says they're a professional violinist, automatically I assume she's a classical player. And I once was a classical player. I don't pretend to be one anymore. I've really sidestepped that in such a way that I respect it so much that I'm like, yeah, I'm not there anymore. My chops are not that. I play the violin upside down on a hoop rather than play concertos.
And that's not
perfectly.
professional in your eyes.
It is professional in my eyes. It's just a different category.
Okay, fair.
And it just makes me feel intimidated when I'm like, oh, but like this girl could probably play circles around me if we were standing there. But if we're not standing, I could play circles actually around her. But
Exactly. I think it's the world has been so rigid for so long.
yes.
That I think we're now beginning to celebrate people who are stepping outside of their comfort zones or even out of their career comfort zones.
Yeah.
So for example, for me as a doctor, to be on social media was very frowned upon when I first started. They were like, that's only what people do who sell out. And I'm like, well, no, there's a way to do it that's not in the way where people sell out.
Right.
You could use the same tactics of being funny, relatable, but also to educate.
For sure.
And in your world, you're like, there's a great way to play the violin and master the classics, but there's a way to also do it in a unique way that people also enjoy to see.
For sure. And I do have to like remind myself that sometimes be like, it's fine. You have your own lane and that is just as valuable as any other lane,
Well, because art, like what's your definition of art?
There is none. I think that art is so subjective, and that's why it's so fun when and I think that's actually one of the helpful things in realizing that, like, if someone's being a hater on your craft or your art, to be like, well, I don't like everything. Art is so subjective.
Right.
And so why should I expect everyone to like me, as a person, as an artist, like in anything? It's just like, yeah, art is so subjective, and that is, I think, what makes it beautiful is there is really no definition of it.
Yeah. I think that subjectivity is a good reminder of why cognitive flexibility is so valuable, of being flexible in your mindset, of saying there's negativity, but there's also positivity.
Yeah.
There is this way I can approach it or this way. And the more you can kind of zoom out of your current situation, the more you're going to be successful at different avenues that you choose to pursue. And I think about art, like you walk into the museums here in New York, some of them have these classical portraits with old school supplies where you're like, wow, art. But then there's also some modern interpretation of art that I'm like, wow, very different style. How this was performed means something to somebody. And that's really just their interpretation of what art is. Whether you like it or not, it's your choice.
Right.
And with the amount of people celebrating you, not just on social media, but at your shows, it's clear that people are enjoying it.
Yes. And I always remind myself of that too. Like everybody has their different reasons for why they do their art. And from the time I was a kid, I just wanted to make people smile. And I remember the very first time I wrote a little rock song and I performed it, and I had only ever played classical up to that point. And I remember performing it and seeing people smile, not just being impressed by what I did and like, oh, wow, but
Which
really,
felt nice, and that's
which
okay.
is great.
Yeah.
But like I said, like I've always wanted to make people like laugh or smile, and to see people like, this is fun and unique and kind of weird, like, like hitting their neighbor. And it was just this new feeling of like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to make people smile.
Yeah. The idea of having the setbacks that you've mentioned, has there ever been one where you felt like it was a setback, but ultimately it ended up being one of the reasons for why you're so successful now?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, I think the most obvious, biggest one in my career was like, and it was hard because it was the first time I ever really put myself out there. So I didn't have any of the evidence behind me of like, it's fine. Haters be haters. Like, I had no evidence to say otherwise. But when I was, just starting out, I actually went on America's Got Talent. And I was so excited. I made it past the first few rounds. And then when I got to the quarterfinals, this whole art of dancing and playing was pretty new to me, and I did not kill it. Like I did not perform that great. And I got the whole X. They told me a lot of really mean comments, and I was devastated.
What was the mean comment? I know you remember it.
Oh, I do. Piers Morgan told me I sounded like a bunch of rats being strangled. That's pretty harsh.
I mean, you sure he wasn't talking about himself?
You know what? It's always, life's a mirror, right?
Exactly.
So there's to you, Piers Morgan. But yeah, it was devastating to say the least, because, I had thought that this was going to be my make or break moment. And I was like, well, obviously it was my break. It was the break.
In the moment.
And, I just was the best word is humiliated. Like everybody I knew was watching. There were 10 or 12 million viewers watching that night. And all of my friends were part of that, all of my family. And I was just like, I need to move countries and develop a whole new social circle. I'm so embarrassed. And also I'm never getting on a stage again. That was so horrible. But I really do think that we have different voices. There's our mind, and our mind is always trying to protect you. It wants to keep you safe. It's like, that was humiliating. We're not doing that again. I'm helping you. Then there's your heart and your spirit, which is a lot quieter, but I think it's a much truer compass. And my heart wouldn't let it go. It was just like, no. There's more for you here. There's more for you. Do not give up. And so after I had a little bit of time to be embarrassed and just kind of take my time to not perform for a little bit, my heart wouldn't give up. And so I was like, all right, we're going to try again. I'm going to listen. And so I started, my plan W was finally what worked, but I just kept trying different things and kept putting myself out there. And honestly, I'm so grateful for that experience, because it taught me in a big way that the people that succeed in life or this industry or whatever you're doing are the people that get up from the falls. Everybody's going to be pushed down multiple times. And it's almost like we're all in this room and everybody's just being pushed over. And finally, the last few people that are standing are the ones that kept getting up, and they're the ones that make it. And that wasn't the last time I got pushed down. That wasn't far from, even the first time, but it was the big one that I think I had to make it over in order to, in hindsight, being able to look back at it now and be like, well, I made it through that. So I can.
And there's the practical implications that, let's say you would have won. You would have been stuck in contracts, right?
100%.
Most people don't think about that with these shows.
I know. Well, you don't know any better. Also, I was so desperate to be have a chance. And so they sent you the paperwork you sign is a book.
Really?
And I didn't have a lawyer. The legal jargon was so confusing, and they hand it to you in a dressing room. And so you're just kind of okay. So you sign all your rights to all your craft away.
Because you're like, this is my opportunity.
This is my chance.
Yeah.
And so it's
what are you going to do? Start negotiating?
Yeah, well, let me call my mom. My mom's going to talk you through this. Because, none of us had lawyers. And so, it's thank heavens I didn't win. And also, one of my favorite things that years later, it took me years to kind of learn this lesson, but so many people always still comment. They're like, oh, the judges were so wrong about her. They were so wrong about you. And it's like, well, they didn't have to be mean, but honestly, when you look back at that performance, I really wasn't that good. It was a new craft. I was so nervous. I'd never had that kind of a experience to be in front of that crowd. So I really didn't kill it. They weren't wrong.
You're being charitable.
But
because they missed the potential.
They missed the potential. But that's the thing, is a lot of times you can't expect very many people to catch potential.
Definitely not Piers Morgan.
Not Piers Morgan. He doesn't have potential in the back. No chance there. But it taught me that sometimes, in life, you aren't good enough yet. I really wasn't good enough for that stage.
Right.
But the most important word is yet. I could take it and I could be like, yeah, I just didn't pass. Or you can be like, all right, I'm going to work a little harder. I'm going to work a little longer. I'm going to hone this craft. And America's Got Talent since has invited me back as a guest performer to be there, a mentor. And it's been a really cool experience because now I'm ready for that stage. I made it. I've honed the craft. I've practiced and I've deserved that spot now. So I don't know. I think that was one of the bigger lessons I learned, is that sometimes no one moment of your life should ever define who you are in the future. That was just you in that moment.
Yeah, it's hard to see that in the moment, though.
Oh, for sure.
What would you say, day after America's Got Talent, day after Piers Morgan, you're in the room with yourself?
Oh.
What are you saying?
I would just give myself the biggest hug and be like, girl, just keep going. I wouldn't want to spoil it. I wouldn't want to tell her anything because I think.
So be sad, do your thing, but.
Cry about it, feel all the feels, but you are going to be just fine. And I think that's the lesson that we all can tell ourselves at any point in time, because life it'll always work itself out, no matter how devastating that disappointment or that breakup or whatever it is. It's you will heal, your heart will be fine, and just keep going.
How did you get this level of, I don't want to say adultness, because I can't think of a great word, but this maturity of understanding of how life works and how to manage these very difficult situations. Like, where does this come from?
It comes from the big falls, honestly. It comes from the devastating moments of realizing that, like, whether it's like on the bathroom in the America's Got Talent backstage floor, you know, like I was crying on that floor. It's like looking back at that girl and being like, well, she made it out of it. Like, and I wasn't super wise then. I just knew enough to put one foot in front of the other and keep trying. You know, or even like the part of myself that like got driven to therapy for the very first time, you know, that part of yourself that's like at the lowest, but somehow got out of it. And every time you go through that cycle of being knocked down, you get a little bit wiser, you get a little bit stronger. And then you've got, kind of like you were saying, it's that past success that teaches you can do it in the future. You get a little bit quicker every time at getting up from these falls.
Yeah. Do you ever look back on moments of your childhood where you had similar experiences? I have read a situation of where you really owned the definition or owned the character of being a pirate.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Right. Yeah, I feel like I had some really tough lessons taught super early of like, you got to be resilient, girl. You just got to own your weird. When I was, I think in first grade, my parents realized I had some like eye problems, and one of my eyes was like not working as hard as the other eye, and they were really worried about it. So guess what? The eye patch went on, and I had to go to school and wear this eye patch. And as you know, kids are great.
Devastating.
They can be devastating. But I remember just being like, you know what? I'm a pirate. I've always kind of had this like fascination and love for pirates, probably ever
even
since
before
then.
that.
I think since then.
Okay,
I think I like leaned in and was like, we love pirates. I'm a freaking pirate stuck in a kid's suburban backyard right now.
Fair.
You know? But I really think that those moments of stepping up, and also my dad and my mom, both of them were so like creative and so supportive. And I say this with the most amount of love. My dad was just a little bit weird and he owned it. And seeing his example of like, you know, you can be a little different than everybody else, and that's magical. You know, gave me the courage as a young kid to like be like, all right, this eye patch wouldn't be my choice, but I'm going to own it and I'm going to be a pirate.
And how do the kids react to that confidence?
You know, that's, I think, how you find your truest friends. Like, I was not the most popular kid in first grade, but I had two friends that stuck by me and, you know, owned it with me, and they didn't care.
You had the pirate squad.
And I had my squad and my pirate squad. They didn't start wearing eye patches as much as I would have loved, but
they didn't get the little parrot sitting on their shoulder.
Right. One of them gets a hook, one gets a parrot. We're like, we're a squad. That would have been great if I'd got
that. Would have been a good Halloween picture.
That would be great. There is a picture of me as a kid somewhere with the eye patch, like with a pirate hat on in my backyard, just being like, yes.
You know what I noticed growing up in Brooklyn, in watching myself or other kids get teased, those kids who were being teased and yet had confidence to own whatever thing that they were doing that someone found odd or weird, didn't get teased as often.
Yeah.
It's like the antidote to being teased is just to own whatever it is that is different about you.
100%.
How weird is that?
Right. Well, as adults, I think we all like get to a point where we just admire people that are brave enough to be unique.
Yeah.
You know, like we've grown up from teasing them, and now like you see people being brave, but you hear the phrase all the time, well, like, I could never do that. I could never get away with that. You know, but it's like, yes, you could.
Yeah.
If you just walk
you
in the
have to
room
choose it
confidently in that outfit or that dress or that with that, you know, persona, like you have to choose it. And yeah, it is interesting though that I think that that's what helps you develop a personality personally, is those moments in like elementary school or junior high when you just have to be like, I'm going to own who I am regardless of what the other people think.
Yeah, you have to ultimately learn who you are and what you like. And part of even like social media success, everyone wants to be a YouTuber or content creator these days. My number one advice to them is go do something in the world. Whatever it is you choose to do.
Yeah.
So that you could bring it to social media as opposed to just becoming famous to become famous.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a really sad and isolated world where if someone throws negative critique your way, you can't really back it up with anything. Because if someone says something about you and you lean back on your successes of my shows or how you went over those shows or how you got knocked down and got back up, you have evidence against that.
Right.
But if someone says, oh, you're famous for no reason, and you're famous for no reason, that can be hard.
Yeah.
On a mindset.
For
so
sure.
having some of those experiences, I think, brings so much value.
100%.
Do people ever come up to you and say like, oh, how do I get popular like you?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
I probably get that asked every day. Like I do a question and answer at my meet and greet, and I probably get asked that almost every day. Yeah, and honestly,
You're like, don't do it.
my
don't
advice is run.
Yes, don't do it.
No, it's similar to what you said. I always just tell them, I'm like, honestly, you have to get up over and over and over again. You just got to keep doing it. Whatever your craft is.
Do you spend a lot of time on social media watching other people's stuff?
Not a ton.
No?
Yeah. I go through phases if I'm like in like research mode of like, oh, what's happening?
Inspo
what are
searching.
the kids doing? You know, what are those Gen Zers? What are they up to? Yeah, so I do a lot of like inspo searching, but I don't.
What app do you do that on?
Honestly, usually TikTok. You know, the most toxic of all apps is
The
where
TikTok
is where I go. But yeah, usually for homework more so than like consumption.
Got it. Yeah, I do the same. And
Yeah.
it's funny that people who are wildly successful on social media are usually not users of social media
Yeah.
themselves, or at least phase out of being
Yeah.
users and then just come back for the inspo
Yeah.
of it all.
I think when you have to spend so much time thinking about content, the last thing you want to do is consume
Yeah, your relationship
it.
changes with it.
Yeah,
right?
it's a little bit of a work. It's like, all right. My dancers though, they keep me young and they'll send me all the funny things that I need to be aware of. They'll keep me abreast of all of it. My little chickens.
What was the last fun video you saw that stands out to you, or that you shared with your friends?
The last fun video. I am loving the Olympics content.
Right?
Like I am so here. I am loving this Olympics season. It's just been really extra magical, at least for me.
It's been probably the most social
Yes.
Olympics it's been ever.
Yes. And I think my favorite new person on the internet is Alona Maher. I think
Who's that?
she's the rugby like captain
Okay.
of the Olympic team, and she is so funny. But she's all her behind the scenes content of the Olympics has just been so fun. And she was talking about going to the Olympic Village and how excited she is, but she was calling it the Villa as if it was Love Island. Anyway, it's just she's very clever, and I just enjoy. I think the reason she's my favorite is because she talks so much about body image, and she's a woman that she's like, my whole life I've been considered overweight, and you know, but she's like, I'm just a large girl, and now I'm an Olympic medalist rugby player. So
Exactly.
ladies, like you can be any shape and size and be fit. Anyways, I just love her.
Right. Your connection to music is very clear. What's been your connection with medicine, with hospitals? Good relationship, bad relationship, in between?
Medicine.
I say medicine like healthcare medicine, not the
healthcare.
actual.
I do have a relationship with healthcare. I actually have a charity that I have started over the last probably 5 years, where I help pay people's medical bills and help people get out of medical debt.
Wow.
And that's
And it's sad that we live in a country where that needs to happen.
right. Yeah, our medical system makes me sad a lot of times. I watched my dad go through it. He passed away from cancer a few years ago.
I'm sorry.
And then my best friend passed away from cancer as well. But watching them go through the process and the fear and seeing that the medical bills weighed so heavily as part of that, and like, I don't know, and then just knowing so many people that go through this process, it just became something really important to me to help. And, you know, I'm very interested in policy change and like starting to get into that world of like just helping advocate for clearer lines, clearer.
Ending surprise billing.
Yes. The surprise billing, ending that. Yeah.
The lack of transparency is really gross. I also lost my mom to cancer while I was actually going through medical school. So I understand the difficulty that comes with it. What was your journey like in losing your father?
Oh, it was hard. Cancer can be so cruel because it takes people slowly, and that was very much my experience. And so, it was. I can just say it was really hard to like lose him slowly. And my family band together through it all. I think that is one of the maybe tiny silver linings of the situation. And and just realizing I had this moment of beauty right at the very end, like, because I was so angry for so long. And then as he was passing away, I'm going to cry, just forewarning. As he was passing away, my sisters and my mom and I were all around his hospital bed and just like holding his hand. And he hadn't been able to like communicate for a few days, but we were like, maybe he can still hear us. So we decided to start telling stories, like our favorite stories of my dad. And before you know it, we were like laughing and we were crying, and this overwhelming feeling of like gratitude came over me for the first time in like a long time, because I was like, wow, even stronger than being angry at what I was losing, I was so grateful for what I had. And that was this amazing father my whole life that taught me to love myself and to be free, and and he was funny. And so, and these are things that when someone's going and fighting through for their life and losing their mind, you start to forget that that's who they really are. And so being able to, like, in that moment, be so strongly reminded of, oh, that's who my dad actually is, not this sick version of himself that he's been for the last year and a half. Anyways, it was really beautiful.
You're literally describing what we just talked about, of making the conscious choice of stepping away from the negativity and seeing for what you had instead of what you've lost.
Yeah.
Your father was this person who put the trait in you to be comfortable with being kooky and different and fun. And that's one of your strengths now. And that can't be taken away.
Absolutely.
So that's I appreciate you sharing that. That's always a hard start. No, why are you apologizing? That's what's supposed to happen. You mentioned that during that journey, there were issues financially that led to different decisions. What happens in those moments?
Well, luckily I was in a space, to be like, we don't need to worry about that. Do what you like. Do what kind of care you want to do.
Right.
But I just also know from the people we met in the hospitals, the friends we made through that experience in the waiting rooms. And I know that's definitely...
That's a side of the world that most people aren't even aware of.
Yes.
Because if you're healthy and you don't see that, especially young.
Yeah. So to see people that didn't have that option just broke my heart, because healthcare only allows for a very specific kind of treatment, not necessarily the treatment that's best for this person. And so to realize that someone's getting a treatment that's not even good for their body, but that's the one that the insurance will cover, and they can't afford anything else. So it just really broke my heart that that's where the state of our medical bills, and that's where it comes from. And so that's why it wasn't even as much based on my personal experience. It was more what I learned as we went through the experience.
Yeah. You mentioned your family also bonded together over the loss and came together even in that moment. Are there any specific moments that you can share of how you came together and what that means for you now?
Yeah, I mean, we've always been very close, but as adults, we've all moved pretty far. And so the experience of having to lift each other up through a huge loss like that will always make you stronger. It's made us more empathetic towards each other. It's made us, it's made us learn how to connect better as we now are far, through that experience. It taught us how we can better be there for each other.
Yeah. Something that I've noticed with loved ones or even friends that have gone through similar times is you fight differently after moments like that. Do you experience that?
Possibly.
And I don't mean literally fight. I mean arguments take a different shape. Whereas before you would argue about these little things, and now you're like, I'm letting this go.
Right. Yeah, they're for sure.
Perspective changes.
Yeah. Politics, we don't need to get into it.
Yeah. No, it's true, because it's you realize what really matters in the world. And
100%.
That's why health needs to be first in whatever you choose. That's why I'm very passionate about this podcast and hopes to give people that perspective so they can see from people like yourself of how important it is to think about your health and the ways that we do have control, and then being comfortable with the ways where we don't always have control.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about control. What's been your relationship with control? I
have a terrible relationship with control. I feel like I've gotten so much better as an adult, but my whole life, I dealt with control in very unhealthy ways. I didn't even realize it till I was in my 20s, my early 20s. I learned that I was anorexic, which is a disease that comes from this need to have control over something in your life. And it was a very odd thing, because I was actually studying to be a therapist for troubled teenage girls. I was working at a rehab facility where a lot of our girls were anorexic. And even with all of that data in front of me, it took me so long to realize that oh my gosh, I'm completely being controlled by this thing that I think I got into because I was trying to control my life, and it now is controlling me. And the only way that I realized even that I had an issue, it wasn't any of the I'm noticing I'm eating less, or any of the big signs. It wasn't any of that taught it to me. It was suddenly just realizing I was miserable in my own life. I was so depressed. I was so unhappy. I had no relationships anymore. Where did they all go? And just kind of working backwards finally and being where, what is it that took all, I've always been a very social person. I've always been, I was always pretty happy too. So to kind of be what happened? And when did I get to this point and realizing it had been years leading up to this like culmination of this exploding in my life? And I think the real moment for me that made me want to change was like I was roommates in college with my sister, and we were living in a house with 6 girls, and we were all very close, I thought. But one day they were all laughing in the other room, and I was like laying on my bed, and I was just too depressed to even get out of bed to like go over and see what they were laughing about. And also I was like, I don't even think I would think it was funny, because I'm just so sad. And then my sister came bouncing into the room, and she jumped on her bed and she opened up her books and started to study. And I thought, I wish she would tell me what they were laughing about in there. And then I thought, I don't remember the last time we laughed together. I don't remember the last time we had a meaningful conversation. What is she even going through in her life? And it just made me suddenly realize I had given up everything in my life for who knows what. And anyways, finally I realized that it was an obsession with food. It was an obsession with weight. It was a avoidance of anything social that had to do with food. I would be like, oh no, I'm not going because I'm not hungry. Or I basically sacrificed everything in my life to keep a disease a secret, even to myself. But it was only through lots of conversations and going to therapy that I was able to realize that was the root of, I just went because I was sad.
Right. And you're pointing it out of this need for control that you're describing. There are like 3 avenues of which people can suffer with anorexia. We use the biopsychosocial model where sometimes it's biological in nature, where you have genetics playing a role. Psychological wise, if you're anxious, depressed, all those factors can play a role. And then the social aspect is what's happening on social media these days with social comparison, people not liking your photos, writing mean comments, bullying. And it's so important to be able to not just automatically jump and assume that you know what a person's going through because they have a diagnosis,
right? But
trying to understand how each one of those components plays a role in their life.
Absolutely.
Did you see little bits of both, all 3 of those, or?
Yes. I mean, I think the depression followed the anorexia. It was a chemical, like lack of nutrition depression.
Sure.
But I honestly, looking backwards, everything's a lot clearer. And I have memories of being a child, being 8 years old and putting on a snowsuit and feeling fat and like finding a belt to wrap around the snowsuit to give myself a little waistline, like as an 8-year-old. Like, and that's just one of the many memories of this. Like, I remember feeling fat very, very young. And I think it was something.
And at that point you were at a healthy weight.
Oh yeah. That's the thing. I've always been very small. And so no one has ever called me overweight. It didn't come from that. I think it came from partially control or perfectionism. And I think also it's genetic. I think that there have been, other people in my family and that before they even knew what this disease was, like I think my grandma struggled with it her whole life, but didn't ever have the ability to get help for it.
And where did you go for when you realized you needed help? Was it family? Was it therapy? Was it medication? All 3?
My mom was my first therapist, actually.
How did that work out?
I've always been really close with my mom, and I remember starting to open up to her about how sad I was and how I just felt no energy and she, I think, had figured out I was anorexic. And I remember one day talking to her, and I was just like, I just broke down. I was like, all I have room to think about in my brain is food. I'm like, I'm always thinking about my next meal and my weight. And she just finally was like, that's not normal, and for the first time out loud, I said, I think I'm anorexic. Because I had studied it in school.
Right.
And so I said it. And it, interestingly enough, when I said it, it was almost like this weight got lifted off my shoulders because I know how to solve a problem, but I don't know how to figure out something that you don't know the root of it.
Exactly.
But once I was like, I think I'm anorexic.
Once you have the dartboard in front of you,
yes. Know. And also it felt true. Like as I said it, it was like, bing, like my intuition was like, yes, finally, you've got it. And so it was terrifying, but the first step I took was I went to the office at BYU. I was in school at the time, and I talked to one of the counselors, and I was like, I'm anorexic. Is there any sort of program that can help? And she's like, there's a group therapy. And so I went to group therapy, which was terrifying. I told all my roommates I was going to a study group. It was a very secret thing for me.
So the group was less terrifying, more than what you were worried about other people would think about you going to the group.
I guess so. Yeah, I didn't tell anybody. Yeah. I didn't tell anybody except my mom. And this group was very, very wonderful for me. Like hearing other people tell basically the same story that you feel crazy for feeling in your brain and being like, oh my gosh, like we all kind of think the same. We all have different roots, all have different reasons, all have different whatever, but like the mindset that felt so insane once I started to dissect it. And I was like, I'm a crazy person. When did I become this? You realize like, oh my gosh, like there's solidarity in this. Like you feel the same way and you don't seem crazy. You seem really nice and normal. Like
unfair how we judge ourselves in comparison to others.
100%. But like seeing it like that just made me feel for the first time safe to talk about it. And anyways, that I went to individual therapy as well, but nothing helped me as much as the group therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of times it's the combination of multiple avenues of support.
Yeah.
Having a strong support system at home is one of the best things that matters for any kind of mental health condition. And what I've noticed in patients who struggle with anorexia is, as you said, getting a label for what has been bothering them for so long has been helpful. Mm-hmm. Although on the flip side, as I've talked about this on social media, there's people who dislike the idea of a label. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious of how you think about this. You mentioned that multiple times in telling the story that you're quote unquote an anorexic, or you were at the time.
Yeah.
Some people don't want to be referred to as that. They say, I'm a person who has anorexia.
Yeah.
Do you see a distinction between the two, and how do you feel about it?
I do. I don't like to ever say I am like depressed or I am an anorexic, but I did struggle with anorexia, and I wouldn't be offended if someone referred to me like that. They use your jargon, I'll use mine. But I do think it's important to make a little bit of a distinction because that is not my defining characteristic. You know what I mean? And I can totally see why someone else wouldn't want that to be the way that the world sees them as, oh, you're a diagnosis. Like, no, like you should never be your diagnosis. You should never be a cancer patient. You're someone who has cancer because we're all so much bigger than that. It's a piece of you. And also it's a piece of me that will always be a part of me at this point. And I think that was the thing I hated the most when I got diagnosed with anorexia. Is I actually did a lot of research. I started reading books. I was like, I'm gonna beat this thing. And I was so sad when I was like, this is an incurable disease. Are you kidding me? Because I was so miserable and hated myself so much during this time. And I finally found the root of it. And to be like, oh, this is gonna be with me forever. And I have now since learned to understand it that, okay, it's always gonna be a little piece of my brain. And now I recognize it so fast when it tries to like come back and it rears its little head and it tries to tell me something that I'm like, at this point, I've heard it so many times. I know you're a lie. I know you're not true. And I don't subscribe to you anymore. You can leave. And that once upon a time was a very dysfunctional, hard relationship to have with something that existed in my own brain. But being able to separate from myself that and not be like, I am anorexia. It's like, no, that's Ed. I called it Ed, my eating disorder. I even named it. And those are Ed's thoughts. These are my thoughts. And making that distinction was really important for me to heal. And to this day, like I said, every time I start to feel it try to come back, it usually tries to come back when I'm stressed or when I feel a little bit out of control with my life. That's when it starts to try to come back in. But I like really don't entertain that anymore. And I'm in a great place with it and have been for years, but only from separating myself from it.
Does the fact that Ed existed at one point and the fact that you're so popular on social media ever intertwine in a bad way?
Honestly, no. I don't think that like being, in the public eye has never exacerbated it in any way. Like, I don't think so, because honestly, the pull to be in that way of living and that way of like eating and all of those things, restrictive, was just as strong when nobody knew who I was. And I really don't believe that. Because
the initial stimuli came from within you as
inside.
Opposed to outside.
Yeah, it was never somebody calling me like overweight that made me be like, okay, well, and so honestly, if somebody comments on my weight online, that doesn't affect me. I don't really care what you think about my body. Any of that always comes from inside of me. And that's the battle I have to face. So.
That's why it's so important on that biopsychosocial model. Like some people will have the opposite situation where they might feel good up until someone else starts and then it triggers a thought process. I guess.
Interesting.
That's why the therapies need to be so individualized.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've had great success with therapy and it seems like you advocate for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's so important to find the right therapist. Like some people are like, therapy's not for me, but it's like, ooh, it took me a couple of times to find, because I remember my first therapist when I was anorexic and going in, he kept trying to find the root of the problem.
Yeah.
And then I felt like I didn't deserve to be anorexic because no one ever made fun of me. Like, no, he's like, what about your parents? I'm like, incredibly supportive, like, so he couldn't find the root. And I felt like he didn't know what to do with me. I found another therapist that didn't make me feel like that and had a different approach, so I'm a huge advocate for therapy. It's taught me how to like process things and good patterns in my mind. And anyway, so yeah.
Another evidence. It's like you studied therapy.
Some would say.
Because it's another evidence-based statement that when you are seeking out a first-time therapist, that the first session should just be a chemistry session to try and figure out your relatability with the person. And you mentioned that you have this unique ability to relate to a teenager as opposed to like a younger child.
So I need a teenage therapist.
Well, no, in the sense of like how you fit well with a teenager.
Yeah.
Let's say someone was wanting to talk to you in a certain way and they were a 6-year-old, maybe you wouldn't vibe with them as well. That doesn't mean you're a bad person.
Right,
it just means you relate better to a fit. So because that therapist didn't vibe with you, doesn't mean they're a bad therapist.
100%.
It just the fit isn't right and you move on and you try and keep fine. The only time where that becomes difficult is when someone doesn't have social support at home. And if their feeling of depression is so strong that they don't have the motivation to get out of bed, to do those small steps of calling the phone numbers, that's where you really need help from medical providers.
Yes.
Where you need a social worker to advocate on your behalf, to help you find people who will get you an appointment earlier rather than later. And that's where I feel like our health system fails a lot.
Yes. Yes. I'm also a big advocate of, and again, if you're super depressed, a lot of times you don't have the motivation to read a book, but I think that some of the best therapy is like
bibliotherapy.
Like reading, finding books that speak to me and like kind of become like the beginning of my day. I read a little bit of this book and then it's through your head through the whole day of like reminding yourself the way you want to think and the way you want to be and like a better option of how to exist. I'm a big fan of that. But also if you don't have the energy to read, podcasts. I am such a big believer in like, I love almost more so than listening to music when I'm driving around. I like to listen to positive podcasts that can uplift me, teach me about how my mind is working, teach me a little bit more about mental health. Here's somebody else's success story. Like, I think that's great therapy that doesn't take a lot of energy and anyone can do, and it's free.
Yeah. What books did you read throughout your journey that were valuable?
I think the most valuable one was Life Without Ed, which it taught me to separate myself. This woman shares her experience of, treating her eating disorder like a dysfunctional, like abusive relationship. And so her therapist,
which is equally, if not more so, as hard, to escape. So
yes,
yeah, very relatable.
Totally. And so she even set up a chair. Her therapist had her put an empty chair in front of her, and she had her talk to her eating disorder. And then she continued this process herself, and then it stopped being a chair she was talking to, and they started being conversations that she just would immediately talk to in her own brain, where she'd started to recognize that is Ed, this is me, and that's a lie, and that's cruel, and this, so she started to like have these inner dialogues with herself, and that was the biggest game changer for me, is learning to have this conversation and separate myself from it. Intuitive Eating was another great book that I read, because I had to learn how to trust my body again. I hadn't trusted it in years and had deprived it and had to learn how to be full. And that book really helped me. I'm trying to remember what the other ones were, but those are the also, not even like eating disorder books, but I discovered Brene Brown at that time, shame researcher. So much of any of these mental disorders, mental disorders, they come from a place of shame and secrecy, and you don't want to share it, and you don't want to, you're too afraid to go to therapy. Like, learning to own that I don't have to be ashamed of this was a really powerful thing.
Yeah. The idea of people taking the chair and talking to another person or talking to their younger selves, all those are really examples of that cognitive flexibility, where when you're thinking about yourself and you're emotionally reasoning your way through life, you're only thinking about it from a very biased standpoint. But when you're talking to someone else, or you're trying to imagine being in someone else's shoes, that takes you out of your current thinking pattern and allows you to experience what would life be like if I didn't think this way.
Yeah.
Or how can I judge this if I was an outsider? So frequently in my office, if a patient is judging themselves harshly during a moment where they should be sad, people have terrible things happen. They lose their parents and they come in and they say, I must be depressed because I'm sad and I shouldn't be sad. I'll sit them down and I'll have them talk to either themselves or their friend who also lost their parent. And they're so kind.
Yeah.
And then I ask them, why are you being kind to your friend, but not to yourself? And just leaving them with that question allows them to start thinking, wow, I am not being kind to myself. When we oftentimes, we always say the mind tries to protect itself, but there's also times the mind can be really mean to itself.
100%. I've also noticed that if stuff stays inside my brain, like lies pass through it very easily. Like I will, I can say really cruel things, or I can be really hard on myself, or say lies to myself that like aren't valid. But if you are journaling your thoughts, or if you say them out loud, it's like the lie meter is a lot stronger of being like, that's actually like really not fair. Like that's actually not true. And I really notice it if I'm writing my thoughts, or if I am like, I think that's why like some of these other ways of expressing yourself are so important in therapy is like journaling, or because you're just like, you can see it. You wrote it on a page and you're like, that's actually really not valid at all.
Yeah. Another evidence-based strategy. So keep going with those.
Hit them out of the park today.
What role did your experience with this Ed situation play in creating your music?
It's been I remember I wrote kind of a whole album inspired by this situation years later. It was because when I was going through it, I wasn't yet writing music. But in my second album, I wrote a song called Shatter Me. And it was really cool to be able to personify my eating disorder by this perfect ballerina stuck in a snow globe, and, her perfect porcelain shell, and it was being protected by the snow globe. And it was like I'm a very visual person and I like storytelling. And so, part of the fun of being an instrumental artist for me is being able to tell a story through visuals. And so it was really cool to see, I thought this was a very niche specific story, but writing about this ballerina and making it pretty open-ended, it's amazing to see what that's meant to fans. And it's still one of my most popular songs, 10 years later, because it could be personified for anyone like everybody feels stuck in something. And so sometimes even though these diseases or these mindsets, they make us feel so isolated and so alone, gosh, write about it. And suddenly everybody has their own story and their own version. And it's like, wow, we all really are just going through the same experiences most of the time, feeling so isolated and alone.
And yet the more we communicate, the more we bring people together, we realize we're so similar.
We're so similar. I mean, my girl Brene Brown, she talks about that all the time of when you just open up a little bit and you give someone this little crack of your vulnerability, you'd be amazed how much oftentimes people will like open up and share theirs because we're all going through it.
It's interesting how music has so much meaning to people. Like you look at when a famous musician passes, the outcry of support of people that say, the music changed me. The words meant something to me. And it could even be not what the musician intended.
Yeah.
Right? It could have been they're talking about their pain, but somehow it resonates with someone else. Do you ever listen to music and find yourself relating it to in that way?
Absolutely.
Is there any music specifically?
I'm kind of a weirdo and I love like movie scores and like, so like, I think the piece I've listened to more than anything is Danny Elfman's, I think it's called Ice Dance, and it's from Edward Scissorhands.
Okay.
And I just find it to be the most calming, it like makes me feel magical if I ever don't, because I think I'm magical. I think we're all very magical and I think we all forget it. So when I listen to that song, it reminds me that like, I'm magical. Everybody's magical. And I don't know, it's like a very calming song to me.
That's cool.
And that's not what that was written about. It's Edward Scissorhands like sculpting an ice sculpture in that moment. But
it means something.
It means it's magic.
The subjectivity of art.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's your routine before you get on stage? What do you do?
Okay. I have a very specific routine.
Oh, okay.
Let's go. I warm up. My dancers and I
warm up vocal cords. Everything.
Violining, yeah.
Okay.
So I'll warm up. I usually warm up for an hour every day. I practice for an hour. And then my dancers and I will stretch together while listening to some like fun music to kind of get us like amped up. And then we actually all do breath work together. I'm a big proponent of breath work and it's like a really cool thing. Like I started doing it and then I started inviting them in and it's fun to do it as a team because it kind of just syncs us all together before we go out and like perform on stage, and our energy is all like hopefully synced up.
You get the hive mentality going.
Absolutely. My hive. Yeah, I usually call them my little chickens. I'm mama hen because they're so little and young. But there's also a fun visualization that sometimes we do after we've done our breath work, where we kind of imagine our hearts. And our hearts, we imagine them starting to glow and get brighter and brighter and fill the room. And then we imagine ourselves on stage and imagine this like ripple of like our heart energy going across the audience and all the way up to the back. And, because I'm always like, you know what? I want them to be enjoying what they hear. I want them to be enjoying what they see. But I also really hope that they feel all of our hearts. Because I think that's like a powerful energy that we do have the ability to like, and that's scientific. You can like we all have an energy field.
Of course.
So to visualize it being so big that they feel my energy all the way in the back is a fun visualization I like to do before I go on stage.
That's really important, because part of what people love in festivals is the feeling that you're connected to everyone.
Yes.
That you escape outside of yourself and outside of your troubles, and you're just kind of one with the unit. It's almost like, in a negative way, it could be like the crowd mentality, but here it's in a positive light, where you're all connected through the music, through the art, and you're just having a great time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that striking the minds from like a psychological perspective in a really healing way.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's the future hold for you? What should the Stirling lights expect from you?
Oh man, what does the future hold? Honestly, it's so crazy to think about. I don't even know exactly what I'll be doing in like 3 years. But I feel like I'm just really learning to like live in my like current. Like I'm loving this tour so much. And I feel like for so much of my career, I was always like, well, what's after this? Like what's next? And you do have to think about that, of course. But also just really being so proud. I worked for months to like get, and years to train to be able to do the things I'm doing on this tour. And, and I worked for years to finish this album, and I'm so grateful I'm not writing right now. That's not my happy place. Touring is my happy place. So right now I'm just so happy to be like kind of living in the fruits of the labors of what I worked so hard to be able to physically and mentally like do. But yeah, the future. I mean, I hope to have a Vegas residency someday. Ooh, okay. So that's one nugget I'll drop. But yeah, other than that, like,
what about a country or a place you'd like to perform? You mentioned you were at Red Rock, but like,
yeah, I love performing in Europe. We're going back to Europe soon. Mm-hmm. I hope to do a lot of international festivals next year. That's my answer.
Okay. Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
Is there a festival that you haven't gone to that you're like, oh, that's...
Well, we did Lollapalooza in Paris last year, and it was so amazing. It was so fun. So I hope to do Lollapalooza in South America.
Mm-hmm. And how do you do performing and managing content at the same time? Is this a team-based thing? Is it coming from your mind and then kind of spreading like your heart does amongst the audience?
Yeah, usually. Well, I do have a guy on tour with me that's like, he's my video content guy, and he'll help me come up with ideas and kind of, but honestly, most of the content that I end up it usually comes from here, but also brainstorming is so helpful. So even if it's, sometimes he'll give me an idea, and it's hard for someone else to give you an idea for your own brand sometimes, and you don't quite catch the vision. And so, but sometimes it's like the perfect seed to lead you to the next idea. So like we'll have little brainstorms and like brainstorm up content ideas. And thankfully for years, actually up until last year, I've always edited all my own content. And so I'm very grateful to have this guy with me that edits my content now for socials. I still edit all my own music videos just because I think it's really fun. But yeah, as far as social media, finally.
That's hard to give up control.
That's the control part of me. This has been a very good, hard exercise to be like, you take it, you edit that one. Like also I have a little editing heart. I love editing. I minored in film. So it's like a little piece
therapy,
of me.
film,
violin,
music, dance.
Trying to dabble.
So basically, when are you going to become a doctor? Because that's clearly the next step.
Heavens, never. Too much
adolescent specialist
pressure. Yeah, I could be the fun one that comes in and just like, how are you doing? We're checking in. Like they have the children's ones. What are they called? The life
child life specialist.
Child life specialist. My friend's a child life specialist.
Oh, they have so much fun.
Yeah, I'm like, do they have a teenage version of that? I could be a teenage child life specialist.
That's fun. Okay, where can people go to support you?
Well, right now we're touring. We're bopping around the States. We'll be bopping around Europe soon, and then we'll be back bopping around the States for Christmas. So we're bopping everywhere. So I'll probably be coming near most people.
Okay. Where do people learn about the tour?
They can go to my website, lindseysterling.com.
Wow. How did you get that?
Actually, I had to buy it.
Fight someone?
I had to buy it.
Did another Lindsey Stirling have
Yes.
it? Or someone just bought it and they were like, not giving it to you?
No, it was another Lindsey Stirling, and I had to buy it.
Were they as cool though?
I mean, I'm sure they were as cool, but they didn't have as many followers.
Fair.
So
So you out.
So I out-followed them, but I'm sure she's really cool.
Okay.
But it was unique. I've never met anyone who spells their name the same way I do.
Oh, interesting.
You know, with the I. Anyways, so I was like,
Okay.
oh, it already exists? But yeah.
That's number one. And then social media platforms, where do people follow you?
At Lindsey Stirling. And I was just early enough to that game. I claimed it. That was my...
Everywhere.
I claimed it everywhere, yeah.
And your favorite platform where you want people is TikTok.
Honestly, actually, I'm an Instagram girl these days
really?
as far as posting. I mean, I post everywhere, but Instagram's
Are you
become my
worried about the
favorite.
TikTok ban?
You know what? No. If it happens, it happens. I'm still
You're like, there's enough social media
There's so many platforms. It's exhausting to post on all of them and keep up, and they all act differently. And yeah, if it goes away, I think
It's
we're
fine.
all going to be fine.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and all your life experiences, because I think it's really valuable for people to hear it, not just from a doctor's perspective, but someone who's experienced all of these things, had the downfalls, had the upswings, had the pauses in life. And I think that's so valuable. So I thank you for sharing all that today.
Oh, thank you. And
Yeah.
thank you for all your really good questions.
Yeah,
Off the fly. I'm so impressed.
That's what we do. Speaking of America's Got Talent, did you know game shows have some wild moments of injuries caught on camera? I actually reacted to them here. As always, stay happy and healthy.